Have you ever heard my thrift store doesn't have items like that? Or I went to the thrift store and I couldn't find anything? Well, in today's video, I'm going to share my exact strategies I use to find the best inventory every time I go to the thrift store. And if you stick around to the end, I'm actually going to help you create a thrift store map that will help you find the best inventory for your reselling business. Let's start with an all too common story. Before I went full time on eBay, I had another job and I would only source on evenings and weekends. I had a coworker who was super interested in reselling but never actually made the commitment to start doing it. Every Monday, this coworker would ask me what I found over the weekend and I would share the things that I found. He would always say, "I don't know how you find these items. I went to the thrift store and I couldn't find anything." Now remember, we worked together, which means we lived in the same areas, which means we had access to the same thrift stores. So how was I able to go to the same thrift stores and find items to resell? And this guy would go to the same thrift stores and not find anything that was worth reselling. There are a few factors that play into finding the best inventory at thrift stores. The first question I would always ask him is, when did you go to the thrift store? And he would typically say like a Saturday afternoon. This is the first mistake a lot of new resellers will make. They assume that whatever time they go to the thrift store will have items to resell. However, every thrift store is different, and whenever items come out onto the floor can vary between different thrift stores. So one of the first things I like to do when I'm going to a new thrift store is find an employee who looks friendly and go have a conversation with them. And I will ask them, when does the inventory typically come out on the floor? For my local thrift store, the majority of new inventory comes out first thing in the morning, even before the store opens up. So when the store opens, you want to be one of the first people in line to have access to the most new inventory. They do bring out carts and racks throughout the day of new inventory. However, the majority of that new inventory is brought out in the morning hours. So my number one tip is to ask someone at the thrift store and find out when that inventory is coming out. Don't assume that the best inventory comes out in the morning. Some thrift stores may stock throughout the day. Some thrift stores like to stock right before the end of the day so that it's fresh for the next morning. So if you can find out when the best inventory is coming out and keep track of this, then you can create a list of what time is the best time to go to thrift stores. So I actually create a list of which stores put out the best inventory at which parts of the day, what time do these employees take their breaks, what time are they rolling carts out, and what time do other resellers start to leave the store. If you know when your competition is coming and when your competition is going, and you can come either before that or after that, you have now eliminated your competition from any new items that are coming out onto the floor. Don't just assume that the best inventory comes in the morning or the best inventory comes in the afternoon. Ask, go and find out. Try different times of the day. Don't just go on a Saturday afternoon and say, well, there's nothing at this thrift store. You have to try the same thrift store at multiple times throughout the week and multiple times throughout the day. A lot of people think that Saturdays are not a good day for sourcing. However, I have actually found that a lot of resellers won't go to the store on Saturday because the stores are very busy with general customers. So if you go on a Saturday in my local area, you'll actually have less competition with resellers, although there may be more people inside the store. Same with Sundays. Here in Utah, the church-run thrift stores are not open on Sundays. However, all the corporate-run thrift stores are open on Sundays. However, most people in Utah do not go out on Sundays, so Sunday is the perfect day to go to these corporate-run thrift stores and have the store to yourself. This varies depending on where you live and what people's patterns are. You have to figure out what the pattern is and then build your plan around that. The next question I would ask him is, how many thrift stores did you go to? And he would simply say, I went to the one by my house. Well, this was another huge mistake. I personally, even when I had a full-time job, would hit at least 15 thrift stores on the weekend to make sure that I was having the most opportunities of finding new inventory. If you're only sourcing from one thrift store, your local thrift store that's down the street, you can only find items at that one thrift store, and if they don't get any donations that week or that day, you might not have any new items to pick. Plus, every time you walk into a new thrift store that you haven't been to in a few days or a few weeks, it is all new inventory. So everything, even the stuff out on the shelf, is new to you. So it gives you a great opportunity to start looking at everything. Where if you continue to go to the same thrift store, you're going to see the same items sitting on the same shelf each day. And the only new stuff is the stuff that is being brought out, which is also the stuff that most people are going after. Now that I do eBay full time, 2 days a week, I make a log sourcing route. So I'll drive 2+ hours in one direction, and then I will work my way back home, hitting every thrift store along the way. I try to spend no more than a half an hour inside each of these thrift stores. And even with that, it becomes a 10 to 12 hour day of sourcing each time I go out and do one of these long sourcing routes. However, the advantage is I'm finding a bunch of new inventory that I haven't seen. I'm bringing my personal expertise to an area, and each new area has different donations. Each area of town has different people that donate, so there's different items to be found at each of the different thrift stores. So even though it's a really long day, I do love my long sourcing days because it gives me the most opportunity to find new items. So my tip number 2 is stop just going to your local thrift store. You have to drive further. Even if that means a long day out sourcing or spending a little bit of gas money, in the end, if you have the knowledge, it will definitely be worth driving a little bit further to check out multiple locations rather than just going to the same location day after day after day. The final question I would ask my coworker was, what items were you looking for? And he would typically respond back with something that I had mentioned previously. Like he would say, I was looking for video games. This is super common in reselling. People will watch a YouTube video of someone saying, these are the items you want to go pick up, and they'll run out to the thrift store and they'll try to find these items. Now, this is a great place to start. However, you have to gain the knowledge. And the only way to gain the knowledge of what sells is to put in the time. Every successful reseller has put in the hours of learning what sells and what doesn't sell. If all you have is a list of things that you saw on a video, it's going to be very difficult to find the items that can resell for money because you don't really know how to find items, you don't know how to look items up, and you're just going based off of what you remember from a video. So what I recommend doing is getting the most knowledge before you even go to the thrift store. If you're unsure how to do this, I created a great video here that talks all about how to gain the knowledge of what items sell on eBay and what items to pick up and what items to leave behind. I'm not going to go into it in too much further detail. However, knowledge is king. So if you have the most amount of knowledge and you go to the most thrift stores and you go at the correct times, you're going to outwork your competition and you're going to simply find more items than anyone else in your area. If you're enjoying this video, you're not going to want to miss next week's video. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Once you have nailed down the big 3, which means going to the most locations at the correct times with the most amount of knowledge, you can then move on to creating a thrift store map. I use a thrift store map every time I go inside a thrift store. Sometimes I'm there first thing in the morning and I'm competing with a lot of other resellers to hit the new carts. And sometimes I'm going to multiple thrift stores all throughout various hours of the day, and I'm cutting my time down to a half an hour so that I can make the most out of my day by hitting the most thrift stores. No matter what your sourcing strategy is, it is extremely important to have a thrift store map. Now, I don't write down my map. I have my map inside my head. However, it's not a bad idea to start writing down your actual attack plan or your thrift store map. The first category is new inventory. Whenever I walk into a thrift store for the very first time, the first thing I'm looking for is new inventory. My thrift stores roll out inventory on carts and racks. Clothing comes on racks, hard goods come on carts. When I walk into a thrift store first thing in the morning, that's the area I want to go to because that is the best area for me to find new items that no one else has picked through. If I go to the shelves first, I may miss the new items that are on there and only see items that I've seen last week or the day before. So it's very critical to hit the new carts. Now this goes for even when I'm sourcing all day long and I show up and there's some carts out on the floor, but they've already been picked through. Those carts have been picked through. However, they've maybe been picked through by a few different people. However, things that have been sitting on the shelf for a couple weeks may have been picked through by multiple people, where the items on the cart are more fresh, so those are the places I go first. So whenever I walk into a thrift store, the first thing I'm looking for is new carts and new racks, and I'm hitting those. Even if other people have already gone through them, They may have missed things or they may not have the knowledge that I have. So I want to go and look there because the new inventory is my best chances of finding the gold. The next stop on my map is high value items. Now, I don't mean the high value items that the thrift store takes and puts behind the glass and puts $100 on. I'm talking about my high value items. So for me personally, this means areas where I am likely to find items that I can resell for $100+. So the first area for me is electronics. So I'm gonna roll through the electronics section after I've hit the new inventory because I know that that is one of the areas that I have a high expertise in and that I can find items that sell for $100 in value. I don't want to go to a section of the store where I can't find items that are going to sell for the most amount of money. I'm not going to waste my time looking at children's clothing, which doesn't have as high of an average sales price as some electronic items do. After electronics, I might hit the outdoor equipment because I have great knowledge in that. After outdoor equipment, I'm going to go hit up shoes, and then I might go look at the glass and see what items they put behind the glass that they have marked up. Sometimes they put garbage behind the glass and they mark it up. Sometimes they put items behind the glass that are marked up. However, there's still enough margin there for me. After that, if I have time remaining, I'm going to go to men's clothing. This may be completely different for you. If you're only a shoe seller, you might go to the shoes. However, you should still source in this manner. So that means when you go to the shoes, pick the shoes that you know sell for the most. So for me, when I go to shoes, I look for boots because I know boots have an average sales price that is higher than, say, flip-flops. So I'm going to look at boots first and then maybe running shoes and then maybe flip-flops. And then maybe I'm going to end with men's dress shoes because that's an area that I know the least amount about. So it's going to take me the longest amount of time to go through those items. And chances are I might miss something because I don't have great knowledge in that. So I would rather spend my time going after my high value items. I do the same thing when I go to men's clothing. If I'm running low on time, I'm just going to check for jackets and jeans because those are the two items that have the highest average sales price. If I have more time, then maybe I'm going to go to men's dress shirts and shorts and t-shirts. However, those items typically sell for less in value. So it just depends on how much time I have at the thrift store and how far I want to go into digging into the inventory. But even if I'm going to search all of men's clothing, I'm still going to do it in the way that I put the high value items first. So jackets sell for the most amount of money and then pants and so on. I want to work my way from high to low and I'm going to source from high to low because that gives me the most bang for my time. The final stop on my map is overlooked areas. So after I've gone through and I've hit all the new carts and I've hit all my high value items, if I have time, I'm going to go back through the thrift store and I'm going to look at the overlooked areas. All of the things that I may have skipped over the first time around, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to pick that store apart. Now, this is only if I have time. If I have time inside this thrift store, I'm going to go and pick through everything. This means that when I come across the bin of wires or a bin out in the hard goods, I'm actually going to dig to the bottom. I'm going to look. Now, a lot of times there's a lot of junk in the bottom of these bins, but sometimes there can be gold in the bottom of these bins. So I want to dig and look where the other resellers aren't. This also means that this is where I'm starting to look high and low. Most people will only look eye level inside of thrift store. So I'm going to bend over, I'm going to get down under the shelf, and I'm going to look at that bottom shelf. I'm going to look up high and say, hey, did anyone miss this item sitting up high? I'm also going to go hit areas of the thrift store that I may not know as much about. Now, I don't know a lot about antiques and collectibles. However, if I have the time, I'm going to roll through there and I'm going to see if there's anything that stands out to me. The last lap around the thrift store can sometimes be the best lap if you take the time to slow down and look things over and ask yourself, do I really know what this item is? If I don't know what the item is, I'm going to look it up. It's very important to build your knowledge while you're at the thrift store. So even if you look something up that isn't worth anything, you now have put that in your memory bank. So next time you not only don't have to look it up, but you can look at it and say, I don't even need to look at that because I know it's not worth anything. Or you find gold and you say, wow, I didn't know that this sold for that. And now you've added something to your personal BOLO list and you can go out and continue to try to find this item next time. I have found that if you want to find the best stuff at thrift stores, you have to go at the right times, you have to go to the most locations, and you have to have the most knowledge. And if you implement a thrift store map strategy of hitting the new inventory and then going to your high value items and then doing one last look through the store, you will find more and better inventory than your competition. If you haven't enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this one. So go ahead and give it a click.